Buenos días, buenos días.
Hi, good
¿Todos nos pueden
morning.
oír?
Is everyone able
¿Nos
to hear
escuchan?
us clearly? Can you hear
Can
me?
everyone hear us? Yes, good morning, everybody. Buenos días, mi gente. Welcome to day 2 of the symposium. My name is Maribel Cifuentes. I'm a portfolio director at the Colorado Health Foundation. And I am, thank you. I am so excited about this panel and these panelists this morning who are really going to bring to life the theme that we're celebrating today, which is power in action. So before we introduce our chat and we meet our amazing panelists, I want to first orient you to how you're going to experience the conversation today in 2 languages. So you're in for a treat, and your right and your left brain is going to work this morning. So today, we wish to recognize and celebrate the languages that are represented by the East Colfax community leaders that you will meet in just a sec. We are going to be practicing language justice throughout our time together. This means that our community leaders will engage in the language of their hearts. Today, those languages are Spanish and English. We invite you to listen in through the interpretation device and the headphones that have been given to you during registration, particularly if you don't understand Spanish. We have team members all around the room, ready and able to hand you interpretation devices if you need them, and also to provide you any assistance. If you have any questions or can't hear the interpretation, please get in touch with one of our CLC members around the room or at the interpretation tables at the back of the ballroom. All good? Great. Because we will be having this conversation in 2 languages, we're going to be mindful to slow the pace of the communication down just a little bit so that our interpreters and our audience can follow along. All right, let's get started. So we have 4 amazing panelists today. All are leaders in their community of East Colfax. And we chose this vibrant community as the focus of our conversation today for a number of important reasons that I want to just very quickly share with you before we do the introductions. The East Colfax corridor is one of the most unique and diverse areas in Colorado and in the United States. It is a combination of residential and commercial spaces and a main thoroughfare, actually the longest in the country, that traverses multiple cities, multiple counties, neighborhoods, councils, and business districts, and encompasses cultures from all around the world. Many languages are spoken in the East Colfax corridor. This community is also the focus of this conversation and of much attention recently with a planned bus rapid transit project upcoming and also a recent opportunity zone designation. And while this is all very, very exciting and wonderful, the longtime East Colfax residents and leaders also worry and are working to prevent displacement of existing residents and businesses, and want to ensure that as opportunities and resources flow into their community, that the lives of the existing residents of this community can also be vastly improved. My notes. So with that very brief background in place, let's meet our panelists. We will start with Ana, and I will now be switching to Spanish, so get your interpretation devices ready. Buenos días, Ana.
Hi, good morning, Ana.
Y muchas gracias
And
por
thank you so
acompañarnos.
much for being here with us
Por
today.
favor, danos una
Please
breve
give us a brief introduction
Cuéntanos un
and tell
poquito
us a
de ti.
little bit
¿Quién eres?
about who you are.
Buenos días.
Hi, good
Buenos días
morning.
a todos.
Good
Mi
morning,
nombre es
everyone.
Ana
My name is
Baez.
Ana Baez,
Soy
and I
líder
am a
comunitaria.
community leader.
Soy de la
And
Ciudad
I
de
am
México
from
y
Mexico
actualmente
City,
vivo en
and
la ciudad de Aurora,
currently
en el
live in
East de
Aurora
Colfax.
on East Colfax.
es un
And
gusto
it is a
estar aquí con
pleasure being
ustedes
here with you all,
presentando
being able
algunas
to
necesidades de mi
present
comunidad.
some of
Gracias.
the needs that I see in my community. Thank
Gracias,
you.
Ana.
Gracias, Ana. Thank you, Ana.
Good morning, wonderful panelists. Will each of you please provide us a brief introduction and tell us just a little bit about yourself?
Hello, everybody. My name is Brendan Green. I'm the co-founder and executive director of the East Colfax Community Collective, East Colfax resident. And our mission is to fight displacement and build collective power in our community to shape our own destiny. And we do that through coalition building, community building, through policy advocacy, and many other activities we'll be discussing today. So it's a blessing to be here with all of you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Good morning, buenos dias. My name is Maisha Fields, and I am the Executive Director of the Dayton Street Opportunity Center, the Fields Foundation, and the founder of the Dawn Clinic. Thank you. I'm also a survivor. My brother was murdered due to gun violence in 2005, so I just like to center myself and all of us here today for anyone who has lost anyone to gun violence. His name was Javad Marshall Fields and Vivian Wolf, and I do everything in their honor to reclaim the power that was taken from him when he lost his life. Thank you for having me.
Yes, and my name is Mateos Alvarez. I'm the Executive Director of the Aurora Economic Opportunity Coalition in Northwest Aurora. Glad to be here. We are a convener organization. We exist to bring many small organizations in Northwest Aurora together to build power and to make change.
Thank you so much for being here. We're going to jump right to the first question. I'm switching to Spanish again. Ana, vamos a comenzar.
Anna, we're going to start off with you today in the first question. If you could please describe your community a little bit to us. What are the topics or issues that the community thinks are the more important for them? And can you also tell us about how you support your community members, in particular those who are most affected by the inequalities, to be able to update their power?
Bueno, pues yo
Yeah,
quiero
well,
decirles
I want
que
to
yo
say
soy la
that
comunidad más
I
afectada
am part of the most affected
y estoy aquí
community
representando a
and
miles de
communities, and I'm here
personas
representing thousands of
que
people
están
who are
batallando
struggling
mucho con
a lot
problemas de
due
comunidad.
to community issues.
Entonces,
And so
trabajo como líder
I work as a
comunitaria.
community
Soy
leader. I am
organizadora
an
también.
organizer as well, and
Y mi trabajo en la
my work in the
comunidad
community, my
es
job is to
organizar
organize
parqueaderos de casas móviles.
organize mobile home
Entonces,
parks. And so
también soy
I
miembro de la
I'm also a
organización de
member
9 to
of
5
the 9 to 5
y junto con
organization,
colaboradores de ellos
and along
y
with some of those
trabajadores
collaborators and some of
trabajamos
the
organizando los
workers, we
parques
work
móviles.
to
Y
organize
quiero
mobile home
decirles por
parks.
qué
And I
soy
just want
parte
to
yo
say why I
de
am
la
part of
comunidad
the community
que está más
who is
afectada
most
porque
affected. In
unos años atrás
a few
vivía
years ago, I lived
en una
in
comunidad de casas móviles
mobile
Denver
home
Meadows,
park, Denver
donde
Meadows,
junto
where
con mi familia
along with
y
my
100
family
familias o
and
más de
100
100
other families, or more than 100 families,
fuimos
we
desplazados
were
de ese parque.
removed from that
El primer
mobile home
parque
park,
de
the
casas
first
móviles de la
mobile
ciudad de
home park
Aurora
in
desplazado. Y
those houses
estuvimos
in Aurora who
junto
were
con la organización
removed,
de 9 to
and
5
we were
3
with
años
the
constantes
organization
de
9 to
lucha
5. We were
por el
constantly fighting with
desplazamiento.
them due to this
Ahora
displacement.
vivo a 20
And
minutos de
now I
ahí
live
en
20 minutes away
automóvil.
from there.
Sigo viviendo en el East de Colfax.
20-minute car
Y
ride,
sigo
and I'm
viviendo
still
en
living
un
in East
parqueadero de
Colfax, and I'm
casas
still
móviles.
living in a mobile home.
Y mucha gente me
A
dice,
lot of people
¿por
tell
qué si
me,
tuviste
well,
tantos
why, if you had
problemas
so many issues,
en el
if you have so
primer,
many issues with your
parque móvil,
first
¿por qué
mobile
te
home park,
mueves a otro?
why are you moving to another
Y la
one?
respuesta
And the
es
answer to that is
porque
because
buscamos
we
vivienda
look for
accesible.
accessible
Eso es. Y cuando hay un
homes, and when
desplazamiento,
there's
los
a
más
displacement,
afectados
those
somos
who
la
are the most
clase
affected
trabajadora.
are the working class.
Y nos llevan hasta la orilla.
And they
Nos
take us
llevan
all the way,
mucho más a
they
las
take us
orillas
really
porque
far
es
out
donde
to the
nosotros
edges
podemos
because that's
pagar.
where we're able to pay.
Ahora,
And
en este
so in
parque,
this
no hay nada
park, there's
nuevo.
nothing new.
Todo sigue igual como en el
Everything
primer
was just like the
parqueadero.
first mobile home
Los
park.
dueños de las casas móviles
The owners
son
of the mobile home parks
personas
are
injustas y estamos viviendo
unfair
verdaderamente
people, and we're
una
living
tragedia.
a true tragedy.
En este
And
momento
in this moment,
está 9 to 5, la
9 to 5,
organización
the
trabajando con
organization is
nosotros
working with us, so 9 to 5,
porque los
because
dueños
the owners
están cobrándonos por
are
parqueaderos
charging us
extras.
for extra parks.
Quitaron la mitad
They removed
del
half
parque de los niños
of
para poder
the
hacer
kids' park
estacionamientos y
to be
cobrárnoslos
able
a
to
nosotros como
charge
residentes.
to be able to make
Y
parking
no solo
spaces and
eso,
charge
ahora
us
si
as
quieren
residents.
mis
And not only
familiares o
that,
mis
but if my
amigos
family members or
ir a
friends
visitarme,
would like to
tienen
visit
que
me,
pasar
they
primero a la
have to
oficina,
first go to the office.
registrar
They
su
have to
vehículo,
register their
enseñar
vehicle,
su
show
licencia,
their driver's
su
license,
registración
and their
y su
registration,
seguro de
proof of
auto.
registration, and their
Y pagar
car insurance,
$5
and they have to pay
por estacionarse
$5
ahí.
to be able to
Tengo derecho
park
nada
there.
más a
So
15
I only have a
visitas
right
por
to
mes,
15
y después
visits
de
a
eso
month,
no
and
puedo
after
tener
that, I
visitantes
can't
hasta después de un mes.
have visitors after a
Son
month.
reglas
So those are
exageradamente
exaggerated
injustas,
rules.
sin
They're
contar el
incredibly
gran
unjust
aumento
without
de renta.
without mentioning
Este
the
año
rent
hubo un
increase.
incremento de
This
más
year
de
there was a
$500
more than
de
$500
renta por
increase,
mes
rent increase a
muchos
month
miembros de la
for a lot of the
comunidad, y
members of the
actualmente
community, and
algunos
some
residentes
residents are
están
currently
pagando
paying
$3,300 por una renta de una casa móvil.
$3,300 for a mobile
Son
home
reglas
park
ridículas
rent.
que nos están
And those are
afectando
ridiculous rates
tremendamente.
that are affecting us
Entonces,
tremendously. And so
gracias a
thank
la
you,
organización
thanks
de
to
9 to
the
5 que
9 to
está
5
trabajando
organization
junto
who
con
is working
nosotros,
with us.
nos han
They
enseñado a
have
tener
taught
voz,
us how to have a voice.
nos han enseñado a
They
que la
have taught
gente
us
con todas
that
estas necesidades
the
tenemos las
people who have all these
herramientas
needs, we all have the
necesarias para
necessary
poder luchar contra
tools
las
to fight against these
injusticias de los
injustices,
dueños de casas móviles.
behaviors from the owners of the mobile home
Y
parks.
mi rol
And
en
my
la
role
comunidad
in the
es trabajar
community is to
juntamente con
work
los
together
residentes
with the
para
residents to be
organizarnos y
able to
aumentar su
organize and
poder.
increase their power.
Yo pienso
I
que los
think
que los dueños tienen mucho dinero gracias a
Have a lot of
nosotros,
money
porque
thanks
nosotros
to
estamos
us, because we are
pagando
paying
esas rentas tan
those
elevadas,
very high
esos
rent
costos por
rates.
cualquier
We have all those
cosa que nos
charges for
aumenten.
any
Pero también quiero
anything that they'd like to
decirles que
charge us
ellos
for.
tienen mucho
But I would
dinero,
also like
pero
to tell them
que
that they have a
una
lot of money,
comunidad
but
organizada tiene mucho
an
poder.
organized community
Gracias.
has a lot more power. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Ana.
Thank you so much, Anna.
We're going to come over to Brendan now. So Brendan, if you could just talk a little bit about your community, what are the things they're talking about, they care about, that's top of mind for them, and also how do you support community members that are most deeply impacted by the inequities that they're experiencing in actualizing and growing their power?
Yeah, so our organization is a very multicultural organization. We have members who speak Burmese, Karen, Amharic. We have Congolese members, and our meetings are run in 4 or 5 separate languages at most times. And our biggest focus, and we have small business leaders as well, immigrant and refugee, BIPOC-owned small business owners as well, make up the majority of our base. Our big focus is making sure that those who are at risk of displacement have decision-making power over the developments that happen in our neighborhood. And the way that we empower our community to take power is by giving them real decision-making power. And so when COVID came, we checked in with our members on what was the biggest need. And our members told us that access to services and relief programs was the biggest urgency, especially in languages that weren't English or Spanish. So we launched a housing assistance program, and we're able to distribute more than $3.6 million in rental assistance into our neighborhood since COVID started. But we are not a service-based organization, and all of the service work that we do is geared towards connecting to those who are most at risk of displacement. And more than 90% of the people we serve through our housing assistance program make 30% AMI or less. And so as COVID started to relax and we were getting out of the crisis, we went back to our members to ask them what programs they wanted us to fight for. We trained 15 of our core leaders to go out and conduct surveys in the neighborhood and vet 8 different models we had identified to fight displacement in the neighborhood. And they collected 136 surveys. 90% of those surveys were in languages other than English, which is not common in community engagement practices. And there was 13 different languages represented. And those models, we were able to whittle them down to 4 models that we then took to our first neighborhood assembly in July of 2022, where we trained our leaders all day on these 4 different models, what they were about, how many people they could impact, how long they would take to implement, and then gave them decision-making power to vote on the top 2 models that we would then fight for as a neighborhood. And the top model that came out of this process was an innovative community land trust model called a mixed income neighborhood trust, where we will raise money up front and purchase apartment buildings in the neighborhood, and then work to stabilize the rent at a significant portion of those units, 60 to 70% of the units, and the other 30% float to market rate to subsidize the units that are stabilized. This is a model that will allow us to do a local level rent stabilization policy. And since our members took that vote about a year ago, I'm proud to announce that we just recently were able to formalize a partnership with the founders of this model called Trust Neighborhoods. And we are going to be the 5th pilot site nationwide of this model, and are excited to be launching it in this coming year.
Thank you, Brandon, and congrats. Maisha, you're next, the same question.
All right, thank you. I just want to say thank you to the incredible leadership of the Colorado Health Foundation, and specifically Karen McNeil. I've been coming to this conference for years, and I've never seen so much color in the room. So I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. And I want to say Aurora is in the building. So I am the founder of the Dayton Street Opportunity Center, and we were founded after the death of my beloved brother, Javon Marshall Fields and Vivian Wolf. And it was during an era and a time where there were not a lot of community resources, nor financial revenue that was available to address the social determinants of health in Aurora. And I remember as a nurse, I consider myself the Black Florence Nightingale. If you don't know who Florence Nightingale is, then please Google her. But I am the Florence Nightingale for Aurora. And I remember going to the city of Aurora, to other philanthropic organizations, and saying, we need a community center in Aurora. We need to address the increase of teen pregnancy. 1 in 3 girls at that time was being pregnant at Central High School. We need to address the amount of children who were underperforming in school. 77% of our kids at that time were not graduating, and they were 2 and 3 grade levels behind. In addition to that, 40% of the residents in Aurora had no access to health care. And so I went around on this campaign with other nurses, other community members, because power is always taken, power is given, or power is mystified. But when we collectively work together and we share a purpose and a collective mission to change our communities, that is what birthed the Dayton Street Opportunity Center. It is a nonprofit incubator, specifically for nonprofits who are ran by people of color, Black, brown, indigenous people of color. They get to occupy our space for free. They get to use the entire community center for free and to build programming. And then we work with them to help them get funding so they can grow up and be phenomenal entities even outside of our building. Many of those folks are here today. I would say the way that we work with community is by understanding that we have to claim our own power, that we have to take it. We have an obligation to be at every single table, whether it is to hire a new police chief in the city of Aurora. I don't know if you knew this, but we're on our 4th in the past year and a half. To have a seat at the table to determine who our next superintendent will be for our schools. We are at the seat of the table to determine who our mayor is going to be. We are at the seat at the table to decide who is going to be in leadership at the federal, state, and local level, and even who is employed at Children's Hospital, at UCH, and the Aurora Medical Center. And so within all those entities, we train young people. We train residents on how to use their voice at whatever table they're at, and how to make sure that they have a right, that they know they have a right to sit at the table and to speak truth to power.
From my standpoint, I just want to give a little context of Northwest Aurora and the Colfax corridor on the eastern part of Colfax corridor. Again, to give context, our community is made up of 160 different languages are spoken, customs are practiced, and faiths are practiced in our community, and it's a 5 by 5 mile kind of radius, so you can just imagine the diversity in that community. But at the same time, with that richness of diversity, it's very economically deprived. It's one of the most deprived areas in all of the state of Colorado, in the region in the Mountain West as well. It's also the gateway to many migrant and immigrant refugees who come into the Metro Denver region, and so it's their second home. It's their beginnings as they come to the state of Colorado. So while there's a lot of beautiful diversity, culture, food, there's also a lot of need in Northwest Aurora economically, and so there's a lot of challenges when it comes to having a voice and to building power within that particular community. And our community is under a lot of stress as well, because there's a lot of development, there's a lot of change taking place within Northwest Aurora, and so we find ourselves in somewhat of a crossroads in terms of, as communities who have been there for such a long time, what does our future look like over the next 10 years? And so we're all feeling, I think, the pressure. And I think for the Aurora Economic Opportunity Coalition, we've invested in becoming a convener organization and bringing lots of small nonprofits together to really think about power in a different way, as Maisha already stated. Many of us, or many of our organizations, while we do great work, most of it is focused on service provider type of services, and we really need to make that shift to do community engagement, empower our communities to have a voice, and to do the change that Maisha already mentioned here. So for us, we're working with some very great organizations along the Colfax corridor that you heard up here that are sitting next to me. But I know Gabriela Jacobo is in the audience. The Resident Leadership Council is also a very powerful force that's working with us. Caitlin Matthews is in here as well, Food Justice Northwest Aurora. So I think for us and for the Aurora Economic Opportunity Coalition, it's trying to work with all the folks who are on stage here and really think about how we build power from a community standpoint, so we don't get pushed out and we don't get gentrified, and that we benefit from the changes around the transit system. We benefit from affordable housing, but if we don't have a voice, our communities are in serious jeopardy.
Okay, we're gonna continue the conversation, build on all the incredible insights that have already been shared, and you hear the tension, right, in the opportunity, but also the challenges that are very real for the East Colfax community. So, and we know that there is often tension when working in community development, because you have to work within an existing system of inequity, while also trying to create something new that works for everyone. So how do you manage the tension of navigating a world that is changing while working within an unjust system? I'm going to switch to Spanish now. Bueno, vamos a seguir la conversación. Entonces,
Let's continue the conversation in
y oímos la
Spanish.
tensión, ¿no?, que todos han elevado ya entre las oportunidades, pero también
We
los
know that
problemas
everybody has
reales que hay
elevated
en la
to
comunidad.
the
Entonces, Ana,
opportunities,
muchas veces tú
and
sabes que hay una
a lot
tensión
of
que
times
surge cuando
there
trabajamos en
is
el desarrollo comunitario,
a lot of tension when we work with the
tienes que
community,
trabajar
because
en
you
un
have to
sistema
work in a system
que
that
definitivamente es
definitely
desigual, no está creado
is not
para la
equal.
desigualdad.
It is not, it's
Mientras
created for
tratas de
inequity.
reinventar y de crear, ¿no?, nuevos
We have to
sistemas
invent and
en
create
los
a
que
new
todos
system in
podamos
which
progresar.
we can
Entonces,
all
¿cómo manejas
progress.
tú
And so how do you
esa tensión
manage
de
that
trabajar en
tension to
en
be
el mundo de hoy,
working
tratando
in
de
today's world,
crear el mundo del
trying to
mañana?
create tomorrow's world?
Bueno, pues
Well,
verdaderamente tenemos que
truly we
trabajar
have to work
más duro y con más
harder
obstáculos.
and with more
Los que tenemos
obstacles,
poco.
those that have been doing this
Y
for a little time.
Pues eso nos trae
And so that
complicaciones
brings a lot of complications
para poder ganar algunos retos que tenemos.
so that we can
Y nos pone en circunstancias más difíciles,
so we
porque
can
si
achieve
podríamos
goals, and so
nosotros
that and it brings certain
poder hacerlo
circumstances,
en
because if we
poco tiempo, ahora
could
tenemos que
do it in
hacerlo
a
en
little bit
2
of
o 3 veces
time,
más de
now
tiempo,
we have it takes us 2
porque
or 3
no
times
tenemos los
longer
recursos
because we don't
necesarios
have the
para eso,
resources that
¿verdad?
are needed
Entonces,
for this.
pues la organización de
And
9
so
to 5 nos
the
está ayudando
9
mucho
to
a
5
cambiar
organization,
sistemas.
they're helping
Está
us
trabajando
change
muy duro
systems,
con
and they're
nosotros
working hard with us
nuestra comunidad.
with our community.
Y tenemos muchos retos,
And we have a
tenemos
lot of
muchos
challenges.
desafíos y tenemos poco dinero para
We
hacerlo,
have a
¿verdad?
little
Pero
money to do it.
yo estoy aquí
But
para
I am
pedirle
here
a
to
las,
ask
a los
to
a las fundaciones
the
que tienen
foundations
poder,
that
a las
have the
fundaciones que
power,
tienen mucho dinero,
those that have a lot of money,
que den dinero a largo plazo
to
a
give
las
money in the
organizaciones que
long run
están
to the
trabajando
organizations
para
that are
las
working for the
comunidades que
communities
tienen poco.
that have
Y
just a little bit of
son
money.
organizaciones
And
que
so
verdaderamente están haciendo un trabajo
these organizations
increíble en
are
las
doing incredible
comunidades.
work in the communities.
Entonces, yo les pido
And
eso,
I
que
do ask you
pongan la
for
mirada
that,
en
so for you to
nosotros, la
set your
gente que
eyes on
tiene
us,
muy poca economía también.
that our economy
Y
is
verdaderamente
low, and
el trabajo que estamos
really the
haciendo,
work
yo
that
como
we are
líder
doing,
comunitaria,
for me as a
estamos,
community leader,
trabajando para
we
crear
are
ese
working
poder
to
en la
create
comunidad.
that power within the
Y
community.
no es fácil,
And it's not
verdaderamente no es
easy.
fácil
It
hacerlo, pero a mí
really
me
is
llena
not
de
easy to do
orgullo
it, but
poder trabajar con mi
it
comunidad.
fills me with pride to be
Siento que
able to
estoy
help my
aportando un
community,
poquito de mí
and I
y
am giving a little bit of
que
myself,
necesitamos más
and we
apoyo
need more support from
de organizaciones que de
from
veras
organizations
quieren luchar
that-
junto con
that
nosotros.
want to
Así
fight
es de
along
que
with us.
para nosotros es
And
el
so
doble
for
de trabajo
us, it is
cuando
twice
se
as
tiene
much
muy
work,
poquito, pero lo estamos haciendo
but
de veras
we
de
are
corazón,
doing
estamos
really
trabajando
from
para
our
nuestra
hearts,
comunidad de corazón.
and we are helping the
Y
community
vamos
with
a
all our
seguir-
hearts. And
vamos
so
a
we're
seguir
going to
luchando
continue,
hasta
we're
ver
going to
cambios
continue fighting
positivos,
until we see positive
a
changes,
que haya verdadero
so that there is really,
verdadera queremos vivir con dignidad.
we want
Eso es lo que yo
to we
quiero.
want to
Yo
live
quiero
with
que
dignity.
en algún futuro
I want that in the
no
future,
solamente
not only
podamos estar viviendo en
we can be
propiedades
living
rentadas. Yo
in
quiero que en un futuro
that we don't only
podamos
live in
nosotros
rental
ser
properties.
ser dueños, perdón,
I want us
de
to
la tierra
be
en donde estamos
owners
viviendo.
of the land that we live in.
Y queremos vivir con
And
dignidad.
we
Eso es lo
want
que
to
queremos
live with
hacer, que nos
dignity, and
permitan
that's
vivir con
what
dignidad.
that's what we want. We
Y
want to be allowed
trabajando
to live
unidos,
with
yo pienso
dignity,
que
and if we
lo
can
vamos a
work
lograr.
together, I
Vamos a
believe that
tratar
we
de
can achieve
cambiar,
it.
sistemas
We're going
y
to try
vamos
to
a
change the
lograrlo.
system, and we're going to achieve it.
Brendan, same question. How do you navigate that tension of working within inequitable systems today, trying to create something different for tomorrow?
Yeah, so one of the things we're fighting for is to take back the right to define who our community is. And traditionally, development decisions at the local level have been dominated by local RNOs that are in a large part made up of the white homeowner class, right? And right now what we have is a development-centered community development model, a developer-centered model. And what happens is private or nonprofit developers come to a community, say they have a project. They're told by funders or city agencies that they need to do community engagement. And folks will go out and build a steering committee of community members to make decisions on this project. But in our experience, many times these steering committees are not representative. It's basically who folks can get in the room at that time. Mostly paid staff of nonprofit organizations, but very seldom it's the large majority of the East Colfax corridor, which is 60% or more renters, a humongous immigrant and refugee population that is monolingual, and those voices aren't represented. And so what we've done to shift power, as Mateo said, together with other organizations in the East Colfax corridor, is we've brought together a lot of the different grassroots organizations that are undeniably rooted in and accountable to our community, that we know, have skin in the game. And we formed a group called the Grassroots Leadership Council. And we spent a year with these 9 organizations training our leaders on the development process, on how development works, the different players in the development models in the East Colfax corridor, so that they can have meaningful engagement. We're in the process of really defining an agenda. Now we're in the process of really defining an agenda. We collectively took action together against a large luxury development that's happening right on the border of Denver and Aurora, 44 luxury townhomes that are going to be sold for $700,000 a piece, right in the midst of some of the most important affordable housing complexes in the East Colfax corridor. And our membership of all of our organizations, Dayton Street Day Labor Center, United for a New Economy, Project Worthmore, Street Fraternity, and many others that are in this room, we were able to turn out more than 200 community members to protest this site and really stake our claim in terms of what we need to see in this community, right? And now we turned out 40 members to a planning board commission hearing to speak against the site. And they still voted 6-0 to approve it. And so what we learned is that we have to change power. And that means electoral power. And so we're getting ready to launch a coordinated GOTV, federated Get Out the Vote campaign based upon housing conditions in Aurora, which are in a state of crisis, to really help our community see the connection between city council and the housing conditions that we're living, and use that as a way to motivate our community to take action and to get out and vote this year in the hopes that we can change power dynamics and really, through doing that, give our community the power to live its dreams by making sure we have good representation. Yeah.
I just want to snap for that. I just want to say that the solutions are in this room. Can everybody just say that? That's right, the solutions are in this room, and they're also being live streamed, and they're listening and participating right now. As we think about tension, tension is required to create change, right? If we think about the Poor People's Movement, I don't know how many of you study history, but as we think about how we create change around social determinants of health, social injustices, economic injustices. We've been doing this work for a very, very long time. The March on Washington happened in 1968. That was 4 years prior to 1964 when we signed the Civil Rights Act of 1964. What does that mean? Well, there was a change and a shift of our messaging based on the tension, based on how we build a collective. So in 1964, we were really focused on the Civil Rights Act. In 1968, we said, we're going to shift this to talk about the Poor People's Campaign. And that's what each of us are talking about right now. We're talking about housing. We're talking about health care. We're talking about access to clean air and food. And so as we think about all of that, the tension will always be there. So when you find yourself in rooms where people are afraid to talk about racism and the effects that it causes on people of color, when people are afraid to talk about classism or ageism, or they want to dehumanize what it means to be poor or what it means to be brown or black, I would implore you, each of you, to stand up straight and tall, to use your voice to speak truth to power and to say that I'm worth it, my community is worth it, and we have a right to health care. We have a right to jobs that pay us a livable wage. We have a right to live in a community where we can live, work, and play. And that is how we empower our community members, and that's how we live in power in the spaces that we have the privilege to sit at. Because many of us get to go to meetings every day, and we get paid to go to meetings. But our community members have to work 2 and 3 jobs to pay rent on a motel on Colfax. And they don't get to speak. So please use your voice, don't shrink, don't be quiet, use your voice and authenticate your power, because you are the solution and we need you in this fight. And when people tell you no, it's okay. That's the worst thing they can say to you. When I bought the Dayton Street Opportunity Center, when everyone told me no, I bought it for $225,000. 10 years ago. It's now worth $1.8 million. The good thing about that is that people can use the center for free. We can do burials for free. We can do quinceañeras. And we just did a huge community baby shower for 400 women who have never had a baby shower, who live off the fringes of Colfax. So even if people tell you no, I bet you the person next to you will say yes.
Community wealth building. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, just to answer the question, for us, again, being a convener organizations of many small organizations in Aurora along the Colfax corridor, I think really answers the question that's being asked here. Among all of the change that's taking place and the rapid kind of shifting of the environment in Northwest Aurora in the Colfax corridor makes it tough for organizations who are small, who are volunteers, to not feel overwhelmed and to feel alone, to try to kind of stay in the neighborhood. And so what we've been able to do is bring small entities together to be able to build a broader and stronger voice in order to speak up on behalf of the community. And I think what's really, really important from my standpoint and an organizer standpoint, get a little technical here, is the technical assistance that our organization is able to provide to small organizations that they wouldn't otherwise get, like the fundamentals of community organizing, the difference between service provider and community engagement, and systems change and policy change and that type of thing, and bringing in the experts to help us think bigger strategically about how to build power and to invest in community wealth building initiatives. That's not possible without organizations like the organizations that are up here and those that I mentioned earlier, you know, all inside of Northwest Aurora. And so that's been very, very helpful. And then I'll just say this as well. For us, it's really about two types of power. There's organized money and there's organized people. In Northwest Aurora, we don't have a lot of money. And that's just generally speaking because of who our community is. And to give you context, we've recently had about 10,000 migrants migrate into the Metro Denver area, mostly Denver and Northwest Aurora. A lot of them landed right in front of our building. The Denver side has received about $15 million over the last 9 months to address the migrant response. In Northwest Aurora, the Colfax corridor has received almost $0. And so we've had to turn inward and work with each other to solve some of these issues. And it's been very strenuous on our community, but we keep moving forward with this work, rely on each other. But that's where foundations and those who fund community organizations and to do this work, and those who say, you ought to invest in art organizations over the long term, over 5 years, over 10 years, so that we can push back on these forces and have the time and the resources and the effort to build power within our communities.
Boy, how time flies. We have about 7 minutes, so we're going to move right into our last question. We will not be doing a formal Q&A with the audience for this panel, but please feel free to connect with the panelists. They will be all throughout the conference, so feel free to continue the conversation with each one of them. So for the last question, I'm going to switch into Spanish. Bueno, tenemos menos de 7 minutos ya porque hemos estado conversando deliciosamente. Entonces, para la última pregunta, Ana.
So the last question for all of you. You all have shown the love in action that you have by supporting and working for your communities and continuing to push for necessary change in East Colfax. There are many other folks here in the audience who are trying to do similar things in their communities and who are also facing the same challenges. What would be some parting wisdom that you would like to share with these change makers?
Pues una palabra para mí que pienso que es importante.
Well, for me, something that I think that is important is empathy.
Y hoy estamos mirando que se está hablando
Yesterday and today, we've talked a lot about power and money here, and truly what I would like is for organizations and foundations who are working on housing
pudieran conocer cómo estamos viviendo nosotros.
I would like for them to get to know how we're living. There's very few organizations who put their focus towards mobile home parks. And
tal
so
vez puedan ellos
what I would like
acercarse
is for them to
a esas personas que tienen tanta
come
necesidad
to those folks
y
who have a lot
decirles
of needs and
que
be able
la
to
vivienda no
say
es un lujo,
that,
es una
tell them
necesidad.
that housing
Y
is
que no
not a
solamente son
luxury,
4
housing is a
paredes,
need. And
sino
it
para
may,
nosotros es
to
nuestro
you,
hogar.
it might only be 4
Gracias.
walls, but for us, this is our home. Thank you.
Brendan, so we have very, very little time left, but we don't want to end without giving you an opportunity to address the audience who are also trying to change and change systems and change conditions in their own communities. And just what parting wisdom would you share with these change makers?
I would just say, don't censor community. Let community decide for itself. Many times people in positions of power, and as nonprofit leaders, you are in positions of power, we carry baggage that limits the realm of what's possible. And we've seen this many times in our state's history. In my past life as an immigrant rights organizer, we saw it with licencias, where a failed attempt to pass licencias in 2002 made the movement gun-shy to try to run legislation because they didn't think it was possible. And it wasn't until a group of undocumented immigrants, Licencias para Todos, organized to put it on the ballot and force the issue that the statewide movement woke up and realized it was possible, and that was achieved in 2013. We saw it with the repeal of our Show Me Your Papers law. Yes, it's worth an applause. Where the immigrant rights movement thought it was only possible to repeal part of the Show Me Your Papers law, only for people who hadn't committed felonies. And it wasn't until we changed our process and gave the undocumented community the decision-making power to decide if we did a full repeal of our Show Me Your Papers law or not, that they were empowered to say, no, we need to get rid of this whole thing. And they gave us the inspiration to fight to repeal our Show Me Your Papers law, and that was also achieved in 2013. And now we see, now in my new role in the housing world, I'm just amazed at how much people are caught up in real estate boxes, is what I call them, and how boxed in people are in terms of what's possible. And we really need to break out of those boxes. We're trying to fix a system and trying to solve it with the same tools that broke the system. And so we need to think bigger. We need to move money in a different way. And we believe that's possible because as organizers, we have to believe it's possible. And that's what we're going to fight to make happen.
Again, just thank you. This is my family up here, and we struggle in this work every day. And so it's been such a blessing to be up here in Keystone. I love Colfax. I'm a Colfax girl from the beginning of the day I was born. But it was good to be here and to be with my friends and family. And so with that, my parting words are to breathe. Breathe through the trauma. Give yourself a moment to say, well done. Say well done to each other. I think it's important as change makers that we stay committed to changing every day ourselves as we work on changing our community. It's important to say hello to people in the elevator. It's important to say hello to people as you're walking through community. As a change maker, it's important that you get on the 15. The 15 is a bus, and it's the longest bus route in the history of the United States of America. Take you all the way from Golden, all the way past, almost to Kansas. So get on the 15, ride the bus, be comfortable on the bus, get off the bus, eat in our community. Don't be afraid of the community members that we live amongst and that we're working to organize and mobilize. And then finally, tell the truth. Be a professional truth teller. At every opportunity that you have an opportunity to do that. And your truth is based on data. Your truth is based on data and lived experiences. So be a professional truth teller and reclaim your power today and empower everyone else in your circle.
Yeah, and my closing words will be to the audience here. Thank you all for having us here, Colorado Health Foundation. And I would imagine that many of us, or most of us in this room, for one reason or the other, will drive to and from Denver International Airport. Well, Northwest Aurora, the Colfax corridor, they're on I-225 in Colfax, or I-70 and I-225. Just send Northwest Aurora some love when you're going there over to the airport. We would appreciate it because we have a very tough road moving forward in terms of what happens to our community and how ready we will be. And so we will be in the fight. But again, if your support is so important to us. And then I think the item that I will close with is that I would really hope that many of us who are in the room to consider investing in fundamentals of community organizing and community engagement together with the service provider type of work that we all do, because there's only so many resources that can be allocated, and by investing in people and building people power, it takes us that much further. And again, it really sets that power within the community that lives there that can help drive the change in the future that we want. So again, thank you for having me and all of us. This is my family, and for all of you who invited us here. So thank you.
Thank you so much. A huge thank you to our panelists and for the tremendous work that you're doing in the East Colfax corridor, but also just in Colorado and perhaps beyond Colorado as well. You're amazing leaders. You inspire all of us. It really has been a privilege to learn from you. So a big thanks to them.